Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is April 12th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone is doing well out there. So just a few stories that I want to touch on today, and then I just let you guys go and enjoy your weekend. It's already Friday, so a touch up here on Brexit. We might actually be having some sort of political revolution. We'll talk about that. And then I just want to briefly discuss some of the other things that we discussed this past week, particularly the stuff with the Democrats and Julian Assange, because I think that's important. I think that might be a setup for what's to come here over the course of probably the remainder of the spring, if not the summer. But real briefly, we had some news come out a few hours ago in regards to North Korea, and we have Kim Jong-un giving the United States till the end of the year to become more flexible. The president said that he will wait until the end of this year for the United States to decide to be more flexible. What is needed is for the U.S. to stop its current way of calculation and come to us with a new calculation, Kim Jong-un said. So this, I'm sure, is just some politics, some strongman politics. Kim Jong-un trying to keep some order and peace within North Korea as much as that's possible. But nevertheless, it's interesting. It's something to discuss. Again, here on the Capital News, we are very much for peace and prosperity. We applaud President Trump and his administration for reaching across this divide to have discussions with North Korea and any country for that matter. It's easy to talk with your friends. It's easy to get along with your friends and allies. It's difficult to reach across and have discussions that turn out to be fruitful when it comes to your enemies or people that we just might not get along with that well. So again, very much applaud President Trump specifically and his administration on having a couple summits with Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans and keeping communication open. We should all hope and pray for peace and prosperity. We're in the 21st century. Enough of the shenanigans. Okay, was it funny maybe before that it was going back and forth with the name calling and who's got the bigger rocket and which button works and which one doesn't and Rocket Man this and Rocket Man that? Okay, you had the time, but guess what? It worked to a degree to get these guys talking, and that's what we need here. Now, the sad thing, obviously, one of those other countries has to deal with Russia, but because the president had a coup staged against him and an investigation that took 2 years, and it's still ongoing, it ain't over. I mean, the Bob Mueller investigation's over, but the politics of it and other investigations taking place within the House run by the Democrats, we ain't seen nothing yet. It ain't done. It ain't over. All right, so buckle up. But he couldn't talk to the Russians because of all of that. But at least he could talk to the North Koreans. Now we'll see if he tries to reach a hand and have discussions with Vladimir Putin. I think he'll probably hold off, unfortunately. It's for the greater good, not only of this country and for that of Russia, but for the world. For everybody to get together and to get along. Can't we all just get along? Evidently not. But at least that was some of the news breaking in regards to North Korea. But again, Capital News, peace and prosperity. Let's hope and pray that we can get there. All right. Now, in regards to Brexit, my buddy, our buddy, and I mean this time, Nigel Farage, he's a friend of this program. He is now starting the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party. He was the former leader of UKIP, which was the United Kingdom Independence Party, which still does exist, but now that's under different leadership. There was a whole bunch of politics that took place over there. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you, but nevertheless, Nigel Farage was a leading proponent of Brexit. He is a member of the European Parliament. He has been a thorn in their side for, I don't know, past couple decades. A huge Eurosceptic, always wanted the UK to leave the EU, and I mean, he was just smiling like a flea on a dog in 2016 when the referendum broke and Brexit was the victor. Of course, now we're in the middle of all of the political shenanigans that are taking place, and that's why Nigel Farage is back at the forefront announcing a new party, the Brexit Party. Okay? So this is exactly what it is. He wants a democratic revolution in UK politics. That's what he is saying. Will he be successful? Well, he was successful a few years ago. There is still a ton of people within the United Kingdom that want Brexit. That's how it is. There's still a ton of people that want to remain. I mean, it was a close vote, I think it was 52-48. But guess what? It's all it takes. That's what you did. That's what you knew could be a possibility, and that's what happened. We have sore losers. We have sore losers in the British Parliament. We have sore losers in our government here in the United States. It's too bad. You lost. Now get on with it. There are bigger problems, bigger fish to fry. We have to deal with here in the U.S. the North Koreans. We have to deal with the Russians. We have to deal with the Middle East. We have to deal with a whole host of domestic issues. But no. Let's just clog everybody's mind and time with Trump-Russia collusion, obstruction of justice, neither. And let's waste everybody's time with Brexit because everybody's uncertain of what's going to happen. Everybody's scared. Everybody's frightened. Just leave and see what happens. I bet you it's not going to be that bad. Is it going to be bumpy first couple months? Yeah, probably will be. But guess what? There were a whole bunch of people saying if they voted to leave, it was going to be Armageddon. Well, the UK is still one of the biggest economies in the world, and people are still getting up and going to work. The sun is still shining during the day, the moon at night. So, I mean, ain't that bad. Ain't that bad. Again, a little perspective. They survived World War I, World War II, a whole host of political, issues over the years, like every country has. But they keep going. They keep going. A little perspective. Just because they're not having the same exact agreement that they had with the rest of Europe for many years, it ain't going to wreck the boat. It ain't going to sink the boat. Believe me. This is just fear-mongering. This is just people throwing a hissy fit saying it's getting difficult. It's just easier to quit and just stay. That's all it is. That's all it is. But at least we have to applaud here Nigel Farage for coming out and saying, it's no more Mr. Nice Guy, is what he's telling a group of people. And hopefully he's successful because he is anticipating, given all of the back and forth that we have been discussing at length for a long time here on this show, is the Brexit shenanigans. And Nigel Farage and his party now, the Brexit Party, are anticipating that it's very likely that the UK will have to hold EU parliamentary elections. So he and many other people who are Eurosceptics and obviously for the Brexit want to become members of the European Parliament. And they want to be a big pain in the you-know-what to the EU. So I applaud them. We've been calling for a political revolution in the UK, specifically if by some sort of underhandedness and very cynical political playing, we have a second referendum in the UK. I mean, I've been calling for it for a long time, and now I am very glad that Nigel Farage is taking the lead. I am not surprised by this whatsoever. I mean, I guess it's sort of you win the battle, but you haven't quite won the war yet. So kudos to him and UKIP and all the other people who were voting to leave the EU, because I honestly think that the EU, it's just a trap. It's just a trap. It doesn't work well. I've stated it here many times before, if not on the political podcast, but definitely on the economic one, that it is very unlikely that the EU will survive, especially in its current form. So over the course of 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if the euro, the currency, and or the EU cease to exist, or it's greatly diminished from its current state. That's just my personal belief, because it's not the same thing as you have here in the United States. That's what they were trying to accomplish. They were trying to accomplish a United States of Europe. There's just too much history in all of those governments and all of those countries for people to just relinquish their sovereignty to a bunch of people that they don't know. And if you have a decent understanding of European history, it's just, I mean, these people have been fighting and arguing and bickering with each other since day one. So I understand. I like the optimism and the hopefulness and everything of trying to get together to create most definitely an economic union, but you really don't have the political union with it. And that is what causes all of these problems, because people are distrusting of these other countries, and given the European history, rightly so. And so they just don't want to relinquish their sovereignty and their rights to govern themselves. That's what the American experiment is all about. That's what the British experiment is all about, and a lot of other Western countries it's all about. Dictating and charting your own path. Being your own sovereign. Not simply just saying, okay, some other people that we don't know from some other countries that we rarely ever travel to and don't know much about, we're just going to let those people make our decisions for us, and we'll just pay them a whole bunch of tax dollars every year. And what do we get out of it? So there's pros and cons to everything. I'm not going to say that it has been a complete loss to have joined the European Union, but when you look at it from a higher elevation, when you look at it from the ideological perspective that I try to look at it from just having the sovereign right to select your leaders and to be in charge of your government is more important than just GDP. It's more important than numbers. And that's why I get so vocal about this. That's why I continuously talk about Brexit, because that's what it's about. It's not about the GDP. It's not about the economic interconnectedness of it all. While that might be interesting to discuss here from time to time, it's not the most important issue to me in this podcast. It's the one about the institution of democracy and people having the right to chart their own course. They wanted to leave. Now it's incumbent. It is the obligation of their elected leaders, Prime Minister Theresa May and the House of Commons, along with the House of Lords, for that matter, to make good on the voice of the people from their vote in 2016. Leave. Leave. If you don't like it, then you leave. Go somewhere else. If you think it's better to live in Germany or France or Italy or Belgium, go ahead. Nobody's stopping you. Nobody's preventing you. But the people voted to leave. Now, if things are as bad as all of the fearmongers say, again, I don't believe that will be the case, but if it is, then if you want to call for some other referendum, some years down the line, I guess you said, well, we gave it a try, we don't like it, here we are. I mean, that you can do, but to have another referendum before you even left, that's just insulting. That cannot stand. So again, my hat is off to Nigel Farage and the other many members of the Brexit Party and others who voted to leave. Now it is incumbent upon them, hopefully, to get as many people into the European Parliament. Again, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope the House of Commons can agree a deal and get this done before the 23rd of May. However, we find that to be highly unlikely, as does Nigel Farage, and that's why they are preparing to send as many people as possible to the European Parliament to be a big thorn in the side of those people and to hold things up and just to cause a ruckus. I mean, that's going to be pretty laughable. I mean, that will be discussed here because I'm going to finally enjoy talking about that if this is what happens. However, I would rather that not be the case, and I would rather Theresa May and the House of Commons come up with a deal before the 23rd of May. But we'll keep you updated. Now, getting back to sort of a weekly update with what happened this week, the big story that I want to focus on, because I think it's something that is likely to be the overarching theme over the coming months, at least until we get President Trump and perhaps maybe Senator Lindsey Graham declassifying information. FISA information, FBI 302s, those are the interview documents that might be disclosed in regards to the investigating of the investigators. And again, this goes back to Attorney General Bill Barr and his testimony over the past couple of days, Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, in front of the House and Senate respectively, where he said, I think spying of a political campaign, a presidential political campaign, is a problem. And the Democrats did not like that statement, even though it is should be factual. I mean, would they like a attorney general who didn't think that was a problem? I mean, come on. It was a problem. It is a problem. It will always be a problem. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever. If there is spying taking place, especially from a foreign adversary, in a presidential election, or any political campaign for that matter, but particularly a presidential campaign, that is a serious issue. That is something that needs to be investigated. Now, the Democrats had no problem investigating Donald Trump. They had no problem investigating his family, his organizations. In fact, they are continuing to investigate Donald Trump, his organizations, his family, his administration, his campaign, the kitchen sink. They have no problem with that, but when the Attorney General comes out and says, I think spying on a political campaign is a problem, it needs to be looked into, that they cannot do. Why? Because they are guilty, folks. The boat is sinking. The rats are abandoning ship. They're pointing the fingers at each other. They're getting into their own little cliques. They got to get their stories straight. Nancy Pelosi, Queen Nancy, coming out and saying the AG, the Attorney General, has gone off the rails. He's the Attorney General of the American people, not President Trump. Hoo-hoo! Go get him, Nancy. You tough girl, you. I mean, it's laughable. It's laughable because they know, even probably without some of this declassification, but most definitely with the declassification, the American people are going to know that what kickstarted this whole Trump-Russian investigation was a fake and phony Steele dossier that was funded for by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign and was sent off to Fusion GPS a political opposition research firm, and they wrote it. So now, in that document was the basis for multiple, not one, but multiple FISA warrants, which is a spying warrant. That's exactly what it is. You go to a secret court, a secret judge goes after this. He says, well, what's your evidence? Here we have this dossier, we have this report, we have multiple reports that has become collectively known as the Steele dossier, Your Honor. Here's what it is. Yeah, go ahead. Did they tell him or her that this was a political document? This was funded for by Hillary Clinton, her campaign, and the DNC? Was that information given to the judge? From what we have an understanding of, no, it wasn't. But we're hopefully going to find out when President Trump declassifies this information. And when this information is declassified, there's going to be nowhere to run for the Democrats, because not only were the Democrats coming out and now attacking not only President Trump and his campaign and administration, but also now the Attorney General. Okay? But it wasn't just the Democrats. This, again, was a dog whistle to the mainstream media, to the likes of Rachel Maddow and Don Lemon and Anderson Cooper and Chuck Todd and all of these people to come out and start blasting Attorney General Bill Barr for making such a statement that spying on a presidential campaign is a problem. That's a factual statement. It is a problem. So what's their problem? What's their issue with it? Again, they are guilty. They are guilty. This is going to be a 180. These people are in trouble and they know it. Jim Comey, Andy McCabe, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Bill Priestap, Attorney General, the former Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, President Obama himself, Susan Rice. I mean, unmasking all of these names coming out, all of these investigations. When it had to deal with the Clintons, well, it was nothing. We weren't going to do it. But if it was Trump, from a political document, they're going to treat it as gospel and ruin a man's life and many other people's in the process. But what do we have now? We have the Bob Mueller investigation done. We have the summary. There was no Trump-Russia collusion. There was no obstruction of justice. Not good enough. We need to see the whole thing. That's the Democrats. Not good enough. We need to see the whole thing. While knowing all the while they are not going to see the whole thing because there's grand jury information in there. There are people who are, what was the wording, peripheral targets in the investigation that basically were investigated, but there was no there. So those people don't want to be dragged into the limelight. That's basically the precedent of the DOJ. They are not going to have people who they're not going after being brought into the limelight, because in today's day and age, these people, their lives would be ruined. CNN, MSNBC, they would be staked out on these people's front yards for the rest of their lives. I mean, that's how bad it is. That's how obsessed they are. Again, Trump derangement syndrome exists. So this is what we're going to continue to see. The rhetoric, the heat is going to be turned up not only on President Trump, but also Attorney General. Now, we are supposed to get a redacted version of the report released. This is the Bob Mueller report released within a week. So that could be next week, that could be the following, but like we've been saying here consistently, we imagine probably within 10 days of Wednesday, we're going to see some sort of report come out. Of course, it's not going to be good enough. Jerry Nadler of the House, he will come out and probably say it's not good enough. Now we're going to subpoena the whole thing. We're going to want Bill Barr, the Attorney General, to come back and testify. We might want Bob Mueller to come forward and testify. Now, here's another interesting thing before I forget. Nancy Pelosi, in her little tirade of saying the Attorney General was going off the rails, basically said that she does not trust Bill Barr, but that she trusts Bob Mueller. That statement might come back to bite her in the rear end, because it's quite possible that some of the information in the Mueller report has something to do with Bill Barr's statement that he is under the impression that spying took place during the 2016 presidential campaign, and that the President Donald Trump, or candidate Trump at the time, his campaign was spied upon. So is Nancy Pelosi going to trust Bob Mueller if that happens to be in the report? Interesting question, isn't it? Or is old lady Nancy Pelosi, Queen of the House, is she going to have to backstep that and say, oh, crap, I don't like Bob Mueller anymore? And here's the sad thing, folks. She'll get cover. The mainstream media will cover her, but she ain't going to get any cover here on the Capitol News because she said it. She doesn't trust Bill Barr, but she trusts Bob Mueller. So we'll see if that information comes out and if she no longer trusts Bob Mueller. Real lastly, before we go here today, again with the Julian Assange thing, I don't think a lot of this stuff is coincidental. Again, we've had some podcasts here with those were the titles, too coincidental to be coincidence, or one too many a coincidence. I mean, you got to start to read between the lines, connect the dots, look at everything sort of as a picture. It is a picture, and you have to connect the dots. I mean, you had some big loans from the IMF go to Ecuador here recently, and lo and behold, now you have Julian Assange being arrested. Will he be extradited back to the United States? He probably will be, because I think a lot of this goes hand in hand, because he had a lot of information in regards to the DNC hacking, all right? And remember, we had that conversation a while, too, when we were going through Lisa Page, her testimony behind closed doors, and how I brought up how Seth Rich, a former member of the DNC, and he was a staff worker for the DNC, I believe, or at least a volunteer during the 2016 campaign, and this young man was murdered. And to my knowledge, the case is yet to be solved. So it's still an open case. And the reason why I bring up this young man's name, Seth Rich, is because Julian Assange, in an interview a few years ago, sort of slip of a tongue, basically said that our sources go through, they put themselves in harm's way. And this was in regards to a question regarding Seth Rich. And so the reporter was actually paying attention to what Julian Assange was saying and said, whoa, what do you mean, Mr. Assange? Do you mean that Seth Rich was your source? And you can sort of see the deer in the headlights that Julian Assange may have let that slip. And he's like, no, I'm just trying to stress the point that our sources, they put themselves at many times in great risk. And the reporter again pressed him on it and said, well, why would you mention that with the question in regards to Seth Rich? And again, he just gave the standard answer that our sources go through hell a lot of times and put themselves in danger to get us the information. So I don't think this is a coincidence that you now have the Bob Mueller report wrapping up. You have Attorney General Bill Barr coming out and saying spying on a candidate, on a presidential candidate, his campaign is a problem. The declassification waiting in the wings from the president himself and or Senator Lindsey Graham. And then don't forget the Office of Inspectors General reports that are due to come out, again, hopefully sooner rather than later. And we're anticipating by the end of summer at the latest, but hopefully sooner. And then you have Julian Assange and all of that news. It's setting the stage for, I hope, the collapse of our two-tier justice system, where some people are above the law, and hopefully the president, his attorney general, and many others within his administration and Congress and Senate can make this country a country where nobody is above the law. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. As always, please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, leave your comments. I would love to hear from you. Enjoy your weekend. I'll catch you here next time. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.